Hi everybody. In this video, we want to talk about how to put an image on our page. This is there'll be a few concepts with this that you really have to apply to all images going forward. As far as the file structure, meaning how you save them, we're going to create a subfolder in the main folder. It works the same way with hyperlinks in our once we start making websites with multiple pages. So what I'm really talking about is file structure, and then how you actually write like a path, meaning like a set of directions, how to get from one file to another, or how to get from a file, which is could be like a web page, to an image, which is what we're going to do now. Um, so the rest of the stuff you should have. So we're looking at step 10. Let me open up my project. So what we have intro to coding. This is music page. And this is my file. So I'll double click on it. I don't have the formatting your page will have. This was just a demo of lists. I only have 2 lists. You guys will have 3 lists on your page. But what you want to do is you want to put images maybe on the bottom, or you can really put them anywhere. I'll show you how to do it. And wherever you put the tags is where the images will go. So not sure that any of you have heard of this band, but one of my favorite bands when I was growing up was called Van Halen. So we're going to use Google Images or any other website really to get images for our projects. So Google Images is probably the easiest and has the most options. So let's search for the name of the band I want to put in. You guys can put in images of anything you want. There's an old image probably in the 1970s. So with Google Images, these little images here are like the previews, they're the thumbnails. If you try to save them, you're going to have a problem. It lets you save it, but then when you go to put it on your web page, it won't show up. So you don't want to save what they call like the thumbnail images. You want to try and open the image big on whatever page is located on. All these little images that show up in Google image results, they're not like saved on like Google's website. They're on other people's websites, and Google just aggregates them. Google just displays them all in one place. You don't want to try and save an image from where they are here. You want to click on them and get the image from whatever website it's on. So for example, I'm not going to try and save this one. I want to try and go to the page, and the page it's on is previewed here. So I'm going to click on the page that it's on, and this is the actual website that has the image, ultimateclassicrock.com. So this website, which has nothing to do with Google, is actually hosting the image. Google just displayed this image in the search results as it displayed many images. So once you find the image you want, click on it and try and get to the website that's actually hosting that image. Now, another thing good about this image is that it's big. The bigger the image, the more pixels it has, the higher resolution it is. You don't want to use small images. You can resize them on your web page, but the bigger they are, the clearer they are. If you take a small image and you try to make it big, it's going to be blurry, it's going to be pixelated. So if this is the image we want, and we have to remember too, we have to be careful when we're plagiarizing, because this web page or anything we do in this class is for educational purposes. I can go on someone's website, and you can go on someone's website and take an image and put it on yours. Our web pages are not being hosted on the internet. They strictly exist on our computers folders at home. We're not using them for money purposes, to make money or anything like that. So we're allowed to use them because they're for education. So to get this image, I'm going to right click on it. I'm going to go to Save As. And now I want to navigate to my project folder. So go to Documents, Intro to Coding, John Walsh Music Page. That's my project folder. I'm going to go in there. In my project folder, I have my web page. Well, this is where, because rather than just having one web page with text on it and some formatting, now we're going to start adding things to it. And web pages, websites, they're really a collection of all the content you see on web pages and websites typically exists in multiple files. So, for example, we can't make the image part of index.htm. What we can do is we can save the image alongside of it or in its own folder, and then link index.htm to that image, and that's how the image will display on the web page. That's the concept of web design. There's lots of linked files, included files, that kind of thing. So what we need to do is we want to make a folder for our images. So I'm going to right click in my project folder, and I'm going to make a new folder, which now means that it's going to be a subfolder of my John Walsh music page folder. I'm going to call this folder images. That's what you should call yours. Standard practice. You can really call it anything, and it'll work. But we should follow like standard practices. So I'm going to open up my web page. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't save the image yet. So I make the folder called images. I'll open that folder, and now I will save this. I'll try this one more time. Saving the image, or is it saving the? Hold on one second. Oh, save image as. I'm sorry. I must have right clicked somewhere else. You want to make sure you're seeing saved image as. Save image as. Somehow I got the page. Okay. Let me go back. Intro to coding. Here's my project. Here's the images folder I made. Okay, I want to save this image in the images folder. I don't know what happened last time. I must have clicked off the page and actually got the web page itself. Okay, so you want to right click on the image, save image as, and then navigate to your project folder, make an images folder, and save it. Now, if you look at the name of this, it's pretty big. I'm just gonna change it to Van Halen. All one word. I want to make this easy to write because I'm going to have to write what's called a path, and the band name or the picture name is going to be in that path. So the fewer words I make it, the more easy it'll be to just type it without making a mistake. So I'm going to save that. Okay, so I'll only open up the code to my page. Back to my index.htm page, which is my web page. I'm going to go to Notepad. All right, so you can really put your images anywhere. What you need to use is the img tag. So I'm going to put mine at the bottom of the page. The img. Whoops. So this is an HTML tag. Now, with this HTML tag, we need to use an attribute. If you just leave it at img, it means you're going to put an image on the page, but you have to say what image. So we use an HTML attribute, not a CSS attribute. They're different, right? Class was an HTML attribute. So HTML attributes are always followed by an equal sign. CSS attributes are always followed by a colon. Two different languages, two different syntaxes. So in our img tag, we're going to use the src attribute. I'm going to say equals. I'm going to use what's called a relative path. Relative means based on where I am now. So I'm inside of index.htm. How do I get to where I want to go? Well, for that, all you have to do is look at your folder structure. So relative to being here, we're in index.htm. How do we get to Van Halen? How do we get to the picture called Van Halen that we saved? Well, the answer would be we go to images, and there's the picture. And the name of the picture is Van Halen.jpg. All one word, no spaces. The caps don't matter for HTML. I still practice the camel casing naming technique like we do with variables in Java, but it's just a habit. It's you can really name it anything. As long as there's no spaces, you're going to be fine. So the name of my picture is Van Halen.jpg. So again, we're going from index to our first step. If you're giving, if one house is indexed and the other house is Van Halen.jpg, and you're giving someone directions, you would say, okay, go to images, and then go to Van Halen.jpg. So relative to your house, relative to index.htm, you're going to go to images, and you're going to go to Van Halen.jpg. So this is how we actually translate that to what's called a relative path. So we're going to set the source equal to go to images, then go to Van Halen. I didn't capitalize that. I want it to matter. It's HTML. Then go to Van Halen.jpg. Close your opening tag. So we have the img tag. We have the src attribute. We set that equal to the relative path. That's the relative path. I don't know how I got that on the back on the dash. We don't need that. Source equals the relative path. The relative path is where we're going to find the image based on where we are. We're in index. Index has to go to images, then it has to go to the image itself to display it. We separate every step in the path or every step in the directions with a forward slash. Let's see if this works. Let's go to File, Save. Where is my web page? Open in the browser. Here I am. Okay, so here's my image. Now, not like trying to create a main display. Let's say I wanted to just make make this a thumbnail image. Well, that's where CSS comes in. I'm going to let me get one more image on here so I could show you guys in like fewer steps. Get another rock band. All right, so again, I'm gonna find the big image. I'm not gonna try and save this image. Will it even let me? It will let me, but then when I go to save, if I save one of these small images in Google Results, it won't display on my page. So I want to always go to the image and left click it to open it on whatever page it's being hosted on. Okay, in this case, it's right here. So again, I always want the biggest image I can get. I'm not gonna right click and save. I don't want to right click and save this image. This is a tiny thumbnail image, so that means it's got low resolution. I want to click on it, see if there's a bigger version. There is. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to save image as. Okay, and now it already takes me to my images folder. I don't even have to navigate to it because it's as if the computer knows that I'm working out of it. Okay, so I'm just going to call this one Guns in for N for short for and. Roses, Guns and Roses. Now, I'm not writing .jpg or anything. That's written automatically by whatever type the image is. Someone uploaded these images to the internet as whatever types are, whether they're JPEGs, whether they're GIFs. You can't change that here. If you change that here, it's not going to display. You could open up Paint and change the file type if you needed to, but you can't change it here. So whatever this is on automatically, just leave it. If it's JPEG, leave it as a JPEG. You could change the name, that's fine. It's a good thing to change the name because a lot of times the names of these files are just a lot of letters and numbers that don't really make sense because they're auto-generated, and you'd have to copy all that and get it right. So it's much easier if you give it a simple name. So I'm calling mine Guns and Roses, all one word. I'm going to save it. So now I have two images saved in my images folder. Let me put that one up there. So let's say I want them one on top of the other. I'll do img src equals images slash, and this time it's going to be, so it's in the same folder. We're going to images, but this time the name of it is Guns in Roses .jpg. Let's save it, see what it looks like, and then we'll throw some CSS in there just to kind of make it look a little better. You guys will see what I'm talking about. Where is my... All right, so I got these two giant pictures, and that looks very amateurish. They're just images thrown on the web page. They're not formatted. They're not sized. So we need to do something about this. Now, if you notice, one is on top of the other, but that's really just because they're so big that that the second picture would fit next to the other one, so it just automatically defaults to the line underneath it. All right, so I want to do something where I make the images. I want to resize them, basically. If I want two images on top of each other, they would look good if they were the same width. These two images, they're not the same proportions, right? This Guns N' Roses image is a very wide image. It's wider than the Van Halen image. There's more people in it. So it's wider. So if I displayed these next to each other on the page, I might want to make them the same height, even though Guns N' Roses would be wider. However, I want to display one on top of the other on the web page, kind of the way this is. So I think if you're doing that, it would look better to make them the same width. So on yours, make sure you pick at least one or the other, either the same height or same width. So we can do this for now, where we're going to write style to the IMG tag. Oops. I'll set up my opening, closing curly braces. And I'm simply going to do this. We're going to do width. And then you can start playing with numbers. You could do, let's say like 500 px, 500 pixels. Save it. Let's see what it looks like. Okay, so now you can see that they're both narrower. Now there is room for them to both go next to each other on the same line. That doesn't look too good because this picture is much taller than this picture. So one of the things you can, you want to think of, well, what kind of looks symmetrical? You can't make two disproportionate pictures look symmetrical, but you can arrange them so they look as though they belong next to each other or one on top of the other. These don't belong next to each other. This is clearly shorter than this one. So I chose width because my intention was to put them on top of each other anyway. There's a simple thing right here. We'll make this a little different once we get more in the layouts. We'll do something much more just more current and like appropriate. But for now, I'm going to use what's called a BR tag. It stands for page break. So I put a BR between the first and second image tags, and that puts them on top of each other. So now you see there's actually some symmetry to it. They're both the same width, and because they're on top of each other, that shows that they're both the same width. So they kind of line up. If you want to put your images next to each other, so let's say I got rid of the BR. If you want to put them next to each other, you're probably better off choosing a height. The problem with that is, though, that, well, let's see, actually, there is no problem, really. Let's say we want our pictures next to each other for our layout. So let's change them to the same height. They're still going on top of each other because we made the height very big, so they can't fit next to each other. The width scales proportionately to whatever you set the height at, and conversely, the height will scale proportionally to whatever you set the width at. You should only set one or the other. Don't ever set the width and the height for an actual photograph, because what's going to happen is you're going to distort it. You're going to, especially if you're taking a photograph of a person or a living creature or something. If you arbitrarily choose, I want it to be this width and this height, you're going to distort the picture. So, for example, let me just show what I mean. Don't ever do this. Don't do both, because this could happen. I'm making a ridiculously low number just to exaggerate the effect I'm talking about, but that's why you don't want to choose both. And you could start randomly throwing different numbers at it to see if it improves it. That improves it somewhat, but if you see it, these images are still squashed, and differently than each other. Like this, the Guns N' Roses is squashed more than the Van Halen, because the Guns N' Roses was proportionately a wider picture to begin with. So if you're putting images next to each other, make them the same height. If you're putting images on top of each other, make them the same width. Don't make them both the same height. Don't choose values for both height and width. Only one or the other. Okay. For this is good for now. As we do more, let's say we had a page with like a lot of images on it. Let's say we did something like, let's say if we looked at our home page, you can see we have like a big image show here, and then as you scroll down, you have smaller images. Here's one of the superintendent, and then you have like this section here where we have little feature images. If we had something like this going on, where you clearly have three different sections for images. We have the main image, and then we have the image of the superintendent, and then we have a whole section of these images. Those are your three different size images. When we get to a point where we have a layout like that, this would not work. We cannot use an image tag because for the style, because if we apply a size to the image tag, then every image on the page is going to be that size. You wouldn't be able to do this. You wouldn't be able to have a big image here, a medium image here, and then smaller images here. So we'll get into at some point, probably next project, is how to actually, you would set a class to the image, and it works just like the way we did it to the list. You can mess around with it if you want, but basically we would also add a class attribute into this image tag. So the image tag would have two attributes. It would have class and it would have source, the SRC. And then instead of writing a style for the image tag, we would do it for the class, whatever we call the class. But that we don't have to do that for this. This is fine. So please follow the outline. Make sure you go through every one of these requirements before you hand this in for a grade. And good luck.